Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host from In Hindsight, Nathan Heintz. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. You heard right. Today we have a special guest on. We have the Unofficial Steelers Podcast on. Well, I'm half the host on that show. The other half is Nathan Heintz from In Hindsight. Nathan, how you doing, my man? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Daniel. Always good to be back with you. So another episode here. Looking forward to some good conversation to kind of get us by heading into I mean, I guess it's kind of summer now, but we'll say is we're trying to get news, some things to talk about going into a little before training camp.
100%. I mean, it's going to be right now. You really don't want to hear any news unless somebody signs an extension or there's a trade. I think everybody's ears are a little bit perked up for that trade announcement, and we're all hoping that it happens sooner than later, but we'll see. But speaking about some announcements during this time, and one being a signing, Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson reached a 4-year deal, $36 million. That's $9 million a year average, with $17 million guaranteed. If you're Najee Harris right now, how are you feeling?
Well, he's probably thinking that he could after this year maybe get something like that from somewhere else. So in terms of for the Steelers' sake, hopefully it is good for their sake in terms of maybe the season he can have. But, he's probably looking at himself like, hey, look, I've been over 1,000-yard rusher the last 3 years. I've kind of helped carry my offense. He's probably going to hope for a similar deal next year, wherever that is.
Yeah. The Steelers had the option of signing him for next year and would have had him inked in for under $7 million a year.
Yeah.
Omar Khan has talked about, they're open to the idea of an extension that still can happen at, certain points. Now, if Najee has another 1,000-yard year, he's going to be wanting more than $9 million a year. And I think all of this kind of just points me in the direction to that. I think this is going to be Najee's last year as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's either going to produce that way and, run himself out with a deal that's too much or worth too much for the Steelers. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of people are thinking, well, they're going to have some money and this, that, and the third, but they stated that this move was a business decision. And I think that big part of it was the $6.8 million that they were going to pay him. Well, if they didn't want to pay him that, even if he has a good year and Warren has a good year, I think they're probably going to end up signing Warren for a longer deal and maybe bring up somebody else, just knowing that they had Warren. I mean, where did they get Warren at? He's an undrafted rookie when he came into the league. Yeah. The Steelers can, if you can get that kind of, obviously you're not going to get that kind of performance out of every undrafted rookie running back.
Right.
That kind of tells you, though, that there's also evidence there that you can get a running back in the 4th, 3rd, 5th round of the draft and still find some success, especially if you have an offensive line that can move people. So, I just think that this is going to be Najee's last year. He's either going to play himself into a bigger contract, or if he ends up not, playing to a certain expectation, then I think they're just going to move on from him. So regardless, I'm not sure he's going to be back. Now, there was some rumors that he had said that he didn't want to, that he asked not for the Steelers not to sign the 5th-year option. Do you think that maybe there are, there's some fire to that smoke, so to speak, given what Stevenson signed?
There could be. I view it more of from a competitive nature standpoint. I think Najee knows his worth, what he's kind of offered to this team. I don't think he's had the most, the best chance to succeed here, given what he's kind of been given with or has had to deal with. Bad play caller, bad quarterback play, bad offensive line for the most part. I think he gets too much flack, man, for what he does. I think he's a good back. He's not a great back, but I think he's a quality back, a back that you can win games with. He's been the focal point of carrying this offense the last 3 years, whether people like that or not. He's been over. I know that 1,000-yard rusher isn't really the biggest deal as maybe it used to be nowadays. I know you can look at some other statistics that you can look at of his and averaging 60 some yards a game, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it all adds up at the end of the day. And what he did the second half of the season last year, him and Jalen Warren, was a huge part as into why they were able to make a push at the end of the season a little bit. So I think he gets too much hate and too much flack for. I think that he brings more to this team than what some people will think. But I view it more as a competitive standpoint on his end. I think he looks around the league and what some of these other backs are making, possibly the same amount that he's making this year. And if he would get a 5th-year option, and he's probably looking at himself, he's better than those guys. And if somebody wants to take a chance on themselves, I don't blame them for that, man.
Yeah, I don't either. And I wouldn't be surprised. Now, this is just my speculation, nothing more than that, that maybe perhaps Najee wanted an extension and maybe talks of an extension. And when they probably told him, we're not going to do that. You're going to play for the $6.8 million.
Yeah.
And maybe he then asked, if you're not going to give me an extension, then I'd rather you not sign it. So that way he can come out and say at the same time that he wants to be a Steeler. He wants to sign, with the Steelers, but they made their decision. And so I think it's going to be his last year. I like him as a player, as a person. I think he's hilarious. Some of the interviews that he's done, especially with the Spanish channels, they're gold. I mean, if you want to laugh, I still go back and probably when I'm not feeling good, I'll go back and watch him just to make me laugh.
Right.
But I personally thought that he deserved the 5th-year option. I personally was surprised when the Pittsburgh Steelers decided not to extend him or not to sign the 5th-year option.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, and it comes down to, he was a captain the year before. He wasn't a captain this past year. There was some issues with some interviews that he may have had, where the Steelers were trying to stop a certain interview after the Browns game or the loss to the Browns.
Yeah.
Where he kind of threw an offensive coordinator under the bus, so to speak. So, there was Steelers PR guys trying to stop that interview, and he wanted to continue. I think the Steelers are, you look at what they did with Chicks-Okorafor last year, benched him for a statement that he had made, not in the media, just on the sideline where nobody else would have heard about it. In fact, none of us would have known about it had, somebody spoken about it. So I just think it's maybe there's more there than just the play on the field.
Yeah, that's possible. We won't probably ever get that information, but I think with where things stand, I think most people were surprised that he didn't get that 5th year. I would have gave it to him. I think it made sense to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Listen, if anything's true there on him wanting to take a chance on himself, if that was somewhat of a discussion in terms of looking at himself for what he's worth, I don't fault him at all for that. A lot of guys will do that, and I think it's good to take risks sometimes. So hopefully he does good and has a good year just for the Steelers' sake as well, and then maybe he can get a decent contract next year. If not, listen, if he doesn't really do anything like that special, I think if he does something similar to where he was last year, I think he'll be back here. I think and I mean that in the way of where he's not going to get a big contract.
So you think he'll sign for less than the 6.8 that he was supposed to? The Steelers would have given him.
He could. I think if he doesn't really have a year similar to his rookie year, yeah, I think that's possible.
It is. I mean, he's got the numbers, but it's been more on like quantity versus quality, if you know what I mean. I think he's averaging under 4 yards a carry. I think that's what he averaged. I'm not sure if he averaged that last year, because he did have some big runs towards the end of the season, and I don't know if that pushed him over that. But for a large part of the last season, he was under 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's context and all that stuff, like, to look at. Like I said, I think he gets too much hate. I think that he's been a valuable piece to what they've done in terms of them winning games the last 3 seasons. But there's context in terms of why he is probably viewed where he's at or ranked amongst other backs where he's at. But if he wants to take a risk on himself, do it 100%. And I think he has talent, but I just, when the Steelers drafted him, they just weren't in a good spot offensively as a whole, almost everywhere. And sometimes guys get put in situations, quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, you name it, and coming out of the draft in the league, and they're not put in a good spot. So he's not the only one, but he's also hasn't been given like the really the provision, I think, for him to really thrive is sometimes running backs will have to thrive. Like, for example, just a stout line or just a good offense that moves the ball, right? And you're not
Yeah.
just relying on the ground and pound and all that other kind of crap like that. So with him kind of coming into the Steelers 3 years ago up to now, like it's been, now this year could be different. The Steelers have 3-4 years later have been able to be in a situation of where they've been able to adjust their line and have been able to maybe do a little bit more offensively and bring some different coaching in and all that stuff. But he hasn't really been given the best tools to succeed either the last 3 years. And it doesn't always work out that way. Like, you can't, when you can even do the same thing with quarterbacks. Like, quarterbacks will go into situations where it's not a great situation to thrive in. Like, there's only so many things in 1 year a team can do. The Steelers in 3 years offensively, they've just kind of neglected their offensive line.
Yeah.
Up until this year.
Yeah, no, you're well, I mean, they addressed it a little bit last year, but it was not addressed until Kevin Colbert was no longer
Right.
the member of the
Right.
Steelers.
All those drafts went by. They didn't do anything.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that, which is the title of the show, which is the end of an era, because it's not just Najee Harris who potentially could be out the door. We have already seen Kenny Pickett, the last first-round pick from Kevin Colbert's tenure, gone. Majority of a lot of his picks are going to be going. I think Pat Freiermuth is probably going to be one that's going to stay. Maybe George Pickens, possibly. It depends. I think if they go out there and get a wide receiver like Ayuk and end up signing him for an extended amount of time, I'm not entirely sure they're going to keep George Pickens around.
Right.
So I'm not entirely sure they're going to be able to afford to pay 2 wide receivers, $60 million.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Wait and see on that one, yeah.
And so, the other person who's a captain, one of Kevin Colbert's greatest draft picks, and in Cam Hayward, he put out a tweet today saying signing off and talk to you guys later or something like that. And there's been a lot of, I don't know, some speculation going back and forth whether or not he's going to end up being a Pittsburgh Steeler past this season. He kind of put out something kind of odd about how his wife is from Cleveland and he has family in Cleveland. He did say that he didn't want to play for the Browns, but brought that up in an odd time. So, I mean, I'm sure it's about contract negotiations, but I don't think it sends out the right message to the fans.
Right. Yeah, it could have been like one of those things, Daniel, of where he didn't mean it and probably meant it in a more lighthearted manner, but also had a little something behind it in the sense like he's not afraid to leave here.
Yeah.
I think that's like in terms of reading it for somebody like that saying something like that, like, sure, okay. And even like today, he downplayed it, said that he wasn't serious about it. He would never go to Cleveland, anything like that. But I think more so putting it out there, like he would be willing to go play elsewhere.
Yeah,
that's the case.
Yeah, and I think he said just that. He said he's going to play in 2025. He just doesn't know if it's going to be for the Steelers. He wants it to be. Yeah. I would like it to be. I think if he goes out there and can prove himself to be healthy, because I think that's going to be the biggest question, right? And I'm not even opposed to extending him a year, but to do a 3-year extension, somebody coming off of two injuries, one surgery. I'm not sure if he had two surgeries last year on the groin. I know he had one in the offseason. May have had one. Yeah, you know what? He did have one earlier in the season. That's why he was out for like 8 weeks. So he had two surgeries on the groin. He's 35. I'm not sure, it makes sense logistically for a businessman like Omar Khan to invest in a player going into the last couple of years of his career off of an injury. We haven't really seen anything. Now, I would be all for having him for 2025 as well. Not just this year, extend him 1 year. And he plays this year. He ends up being healthy throughout the year. And then you extend him another year, and you can continue to do that until he gets his 3 years in. But if you end up coming across a situation where he ends up pulling his groin a couple times again, and his body's just not recovering, well, you're not stuck with a few years of pay on somebody who's may not be able to perform in a 17-week season. 3 rounds of the playoffs, and if they get to where we want them to get, I mean, that's a lot of games in a year for somebody that's a little bit older. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. It's going to be an interesting way on how they go about it. And they could do that. It just seems like Cam just kind of wants it all, like, instead of going year at a time, kind of like how Ben did in a way, toward the end there. Well, not really contractually, but just more so like in terms of taking his career 1 year at a time. Like Cam's kind of all in the boat of like, he knows at least for 3 more years he can perform at a high level, and it's very questionable. So it's, I don't know. It kind of seems like it's 50-50. I'll make a prediction though. I'm going to say as training camp goes on, after the first preseason game, they'll get a deal done. And I'm going to say that it's going to be a 3-year deal, but I'm going to say that it's going to be structured in a way where he will get guaranteed, but it's also going to be structured in a way of where they can get out of it. And so Cam's going to look at it as like, okay, so it's kind of like this. It's like, Cam, you got to meet us halfway here. Okay. We're going to give you a certain amount of guaranteed dollars, but at the same time, this contract's going to be set up in a way where if you listen, you're at the top of your game as you say you are, you're going to get all this. If you're not, we can get out of it. So I think that Omar Khan's very good at structuring contracts. And I think the Steelers want him around. He wants to be around. Worst comes to worst, okay, see you later, if that's the case. If worst comes to worst, see you later. Best of luck with the rest of your career. But I'm going to make a prediction. Don't have this anything to base off of, but I'm only base it off of the way Omar Khan has been doing contracts. And I kind of take it a page out of Patrick Queen's contract a little bit. So with Cameron Hayward, I think that they will get it done because they know they view him as an important piece, but I'm going to say it gets done where he meets them halfway and they can come to terms on an agreement where like, Cam, okay, listen, you say you're a top 5 guy. You're still your position. We believe you are. We need you healthy. That's the main concern, is not being able to have you out there. That's probably what they'll tell him. And it's like, if you're staying healthy and you're performing at the level that you say, okay, we're giving you this guaranteed money right here, which might not be exactly where you want it, but you also have to, hopefully he'll look at it also from their lens. Who knows? Maybe a guy that's been around for so long, maybe he might go back or might kind of cut back a little bit on certain things he's looking at and are able to kind of mutually agree on a couple things. But based off of the way Omar Khan's done contracts, I'm going to predict it's going to be something like that, where we're going to look at this contract and say, okay, yeah, there's some guaranteed money on that one. If he does perform all 3 of these years, yeah, like, well, the Steelers will probably have to eat a little bit of price, but if worse comes to worse, they can get out of it. So it might be something where we might view it as a win-win. Who knows? But it's just hard for me to see the Steelers just go all in on everything that he's looking for and probably wants. So I'm going to say just the fact of Cam being here all this time, I believe him that he wants to be here the rest of his career. I'm going to say he meets them a little bit fair.
I think that's very likely, to be honest with you. I think, once you mentioned Patrick Queen's contract, I thought, yeah, you know what? That's probably the most likely thing. I think the next thing is going to be coming to a number. Are you going to pay him?
Yeah, for sure.
Top 5 money? Because I think that's what he's going to want.
Yeah,
he didn't want to take a pay cut, and he's not going to. And I think that if he stays healthy, he's very much worth every penny of that. You know, Cam Hayward is a guy that's kind of, you know, teeter-tottering on the Hall of Fame, right? He you know, if the Steelers can get all the way, pull off the miracle hit number 7 this year, you know, I think he might have a better chance of getting in.
Yeah, he gets his championship or something.
Yeah, if that ends up happening. But I think that if it doesn't, he might need 3 years worth of being a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro to be able to stamp himself into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, maybe have like one more like kind of big year out of those 3 or something.
100%. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll just be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get back into the conversation with Nathan and the Unofficial Steelers podcast, I want to remind you guys of our of all of our content at steelcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go check it out. If you're interested in any type of, you know, up-to-date news or breaking news, make sure you go and check it out. And while you're there, you can check out all the other audio-only podcasts that are out there on steelcurtainnetwork.com. And don't forget, on Monday, myself, Shannon White, be live on Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel on The Hangover. You don't want to miss it. It's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. With that being said, the title of the show, like I said, is an end of an era. And maybe it's not so much the end, but a beginning. And I think that we have seen, you know, Omar Khan's fingerprints all over, and Andy Weidl's fingerprints all over what the Steelers have become up to this point. You know, drafting 2 tackles first round year after year, when I don't believe Kevin Colbert drafted a first round tackle in his entire tenure as a Steelers general manager. You know, and so with that being said, I think that we're seeing a lot of players that are going to end up probably getting phased out, and we've seen a lot of players get phased out. But I think that the key components or the key core of the team, like the Cam Hayward, your Minkos, your TJ Watts, they're all going to stay there, obviously. And I think that Cam's one of those guys, and I think he's going to end up being a guy that's going to end up being a Steeler. What do you? Right now, there's some rumors going on that there's possible trade there, wide receiver trade. Brandon Ayuk has come out on social media here recently, saying they don't want him back, and everybody's assuming that he's referring to the 49ers.
Yeah,
Steelers restructured Alex Highsmith's, his contract right before the draft for a reason. They thought something was going to happen.
Right.
How close do you think the Steelers are now?
I think their chances are better. And a lot of times this is usually how it goes when it comes to guys wanting out and wanting to go to a new team, or guys just want an extension where they're at and teams are dancing around it. Guys just get fed up. Because here's the thing with these guys is they look at just the crazy market that these wide receivers and even these quarterbacks are getting. And so you got Brandon Ayuk probably looking at some of these contracts some of these guys got. He's probably got his pride, his ego in there on thinking he's better than these guys. And I think there was something reported out there. Niners were offering him like 25, 26, and he wasn't quite budging on it. He wanted a little bit more than that. I don't really know what his worth ultimately is in terms of matching him up with some of these other guys' contracts that they've gotten. But I think for the Steelers' sake, it's probably even better than where they were in the draft. And I felt like the Niners were probably going to do this. Is they drafted a couple receivers and probably just kind of sitting seeing a little bit on what they got. And it's going to come to the point where like they have to do something about it because they're going to have to pay their quarterback. And they already extended one of their wide receivers, and they just paid Christian McCaffrey again. And they got Deebo Samuel on a decent contract too. So like you can only pay so many guys on your team top money. And it's at that point, like, okay, they extended Jennings another couple years. They drafted a receiver in the first round and like the third or fourth round or whatever. Writing's on the wall. And probably by the day, Ayuk's at the place probably of where he's wants to be at a place where he knows that a place that's obviously can pay him, but probably just wants that right away. The Steelers can do it. The Steelers can pay him. They're not paying anybody on offense, so they can. It's just really a matter of how much of a stalemate San Francisco's still being. Do the Steelers want to kind of give up what they're at? Like it's probably just it's probably a just at a place where the Steelers are probably calling just the Niners bluff, honestly, on it. And they know that the Niners are probably going to budge at some point. When that is, who knows? It could be right before the season starts and something big happens. We don't know. But the likelihood, I think when we compare it back to April up to now, I'm going to say the likelihood goes up a little bit more just because San Francisco kind of sees what they have a little bit more offensively than where they were pre-draft or right after the draft. They're probably getting a better sense of guys and their personnel. So they're probably like, I don't know, probably sitting there and just saying to themselves, Niners are probably going to cave at some point. And a lot of times that's the way it goes. These teams have to end up caving because they're waiting too long. Their asking price is too big. And with where the wide receiver market is, if this was 10 years ago, might be a little bit different. But where the wide receiver market is now, teams have to, and they do, but there's more there because in terms of whatever San Francisco wants, there's more there in terms of what the Steelers need San Francisco to kind of understand from is like, dude, like you're going to be paying this guy almost $30 million a year here. And if this was 10 years ago with where the wide receiver market was, San Francisco's asking price probably would be okay. But with where guys are getting paid nowadays, they're going to have to give him 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So San Francisco needs to have an understanding on that, which I'm sure they do, but at the same time are being greedy probably. But it's just so over the top what these guys are making. And yes, San Francisco can't pay all these guys, but that's the problem too, is that the Steelers, the Steelers are probably, look, we know what they've done this offseason. The Steelers have done a lot of things this offseason that they don't normally do. And the Steelers want to be in a place of where they want to win some playoff games. They want to get in a competitive state. I feel like they're willing to give up possibly whatever it takes to get him. I would put my money on it. I don't have inside scoop where I can put my money on it, but at least from some things I've read from like Ray Filippo and a couple other guys, there's definitely a lot of interest still on their side. And even Filippo said a couple weeks ago, who works for the Gazette, post-gazzette out here, that he expects something still to happen at some point. Something's going to happen. So the Steelers definitely have a big interest on the wide receiver market still. We all know that. Just going to be a matter of who it's going to be. But not to keep going here, but with Brandon Ayuk, I honestly feel like the Steelers would be willing and be okay to give up a little bit of a hefty package and a hefty price to get him, and would be willing to pay him. I truly believe that, especially looking at what they've done this offseason. I feel like they want to be aggressive. They don't want to be they don't want to be teetering in that middle of the pack, and they know that, okay, listen, we're going to have to pay to get talent. We're going to have to pay to get talent to get guys here. And if you want to try to take the next step up, you have to pay to get. That's it. And fans don't like that. Fans want to get talent for cheap, and it doesn't work out that way. Not today's NFL anymore. So if fans want to settle with mediocre, then okay, you're going to pay for mediocre. That's what's going to happen. I don't want to hear you complaining when George Pickens isn't getting the ball and the offense isn't moving. You get Brandon Ayuk in here, he's a game changer. He's arguably a top 10 wide receiver. Look what the guy's done the last 3 years since he's come into the league. He's the whole package. He's what you want, especially from a realistic standpoint, outside of getting your Justin Jeffersons and stuff like that. He's what you want, and he's in the prime of his career. You got to pay to get. And I think the Steelers are in a spot where they can do it, but I also feel like with what we've seen them, words can only go so much, but actions speak louder. I think with what we've seen from the Steelers' actions, I think that they would be willing to do it.
It's possible, man. I think it's possible. And the reason why I think it is too is there's been a lot of like extra hype coming out of camp about, Calvin Austin. And I think there might be something there. He might be, this might be a breakout year for him. You never know. But I think that it kind of just reminds me a lot of like, how they were saying they were confident in Mason and they were confident in Kenny or Deontay Johnson. And next thing you know, we have somebody different. And I think you have a point there. He is somebody who is credible. To steal words from Patrick Peterson talking about Russell Wilson, he's a credible wide receiver. He's something that the defenses are going to have to, plan for. And I think he's also a guy that's going to make George Pickens' career a lot better while they're together. I do think that if Ayuk becomes a member of the Steelers, there may not be a George Pickens long term.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're going to pay 2 wide receivers that amount of money. I think eventually by the time that George Pickens, his contract is up, or, because I think he has next year. But he's, he can have contract talks this upcoming season or off season, and which I'm sure he's going to want. And so, with that being said, I don't know if they're going to be able to pay 2 of them. I think they're going to hope that an answer at the quarterback is going to happen. And if it's one of these guys, whether it's Russell Wilson for an extra couple of years, or if Justin Fields improves and becomes that guy at some point, they're going to have to pay the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
They're not drafting a rookie where you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract.
Right.
So it's a lot of money. I mean, but maybe the pendulum needs to shift that way. It's been, all the money's been on the defense for the last few years.
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps that pendulum needs to cross 100%. Back into the offense, and some money needs to be spent that way as well.
Absolutely. If you have the money to do it, do it. It'd be different. Listen, if the Steelers were in a position of they were just kind of rebuilding still and didn't really have a lot of talent, we're probably maybe going to win like 6-7 games. I wouldn't be advocating for this trade.
Mm-hmm.
No, I wouldn't. Just develop your own talent, get some draft capital, try to build up your future. But they already have talent. They have talent already. They have talent that's ready to win a playoff game. They have talent that's ready to win a division. And you have an offense that you're not really paying anybody. So that's why I'm on the side of go do it. Go swing for the fences. You already flipped your whole quarterback room. Who knows? And we have to wait and see how that's going to do. I feel like that most people should be on the end of being more confident in it than last year. But we still have to wait and see how it plays out. But they've done so many different things already. Different offensive coordinator, guys on your defense. They're had at least from how we view it, another good draft. Flipped your wide receiver or your quarterback room. They're in a place of where they want to win. They want to win more games. They want to win a playoff game. If this is the case where they're in a spot like the Raiders or the Chargers, and maybe they're like, for example, maybe they need one more good offseason, right? Maybe they need another just couple years or something like that, then okay, this trade wouldn't make any sense. But if you want to, with what they've done, it does make sense, and it makes sense for them to do it. So I'm not even saying this just because I want them to just go do it because I'm a fan of Brandon Ayuk. I want them to do it because it makes sense where they're at. They need another playmaker on offense, especially in this league, especially in this conference, in this division. They need that. And if you don't do that, listen, I'll even be okay if they go get a Cortland Sutton or something like that. I'll be okay with that. But if fans are on the fence of then making a big time move. Oh, they don't want to give up a first round pick. They don't want to pay the guy a big contract. Okay, then be okay. Then be okay with Van Jefferson as your wide receiver too. I hope you're okay with that. So I'm not okay with that, but I hope you are. So
Yeah. Well, I don't. It seems like the Steelers know that there's a hole there. It appears they wouldn't have tried to make the moves that they were trying to make in the draft for a wide receiver if they didn't. And I understand that he drafted Roman Wilson in the 3rd round, and I think he might be a special talent in the slot position.
yeah, I like him. I think there's things to like as well. But also too, like, again, it would make sense if they're in a spot of the Carolina Panthers, if they're in a spot of the Washington Commanders, if they're in a spot of any of these teams like that that are trying to develop their team through their draft and everything like that. That makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to just go about that with where the Steelers are at. Now, even if they don't make a move for wide receiver, things could still work out okay. Pat Freiermuth could maybe have a better position in the offense this year than he's had the last 2 years. They could still find some success, some guys to move around. But just from a likely realistic standpoint, some of these defenses you're going to go up against in the year and just really a heavy offensive AFC, it would be ideal for them to go get another playmaker.
Yeah, I agree. But we'll see. Time will tell. I think
that's all you can do. Yeah, no, it's all you can do. It's out of our control. But I do think that they have a lot of interest still. I really do.
I do too. I think their interest is still there, and there's no rush at this point.
No, it's not even July yet. So there's still time, and this is kind of how the cookie crumbles a lot in these situations where guys want out or guys want a new deal, and there's it takes time, and then they either get moved or they end up getting what they want. So, but I think just it makes sense with where the Steelers are at. If the Steelers were in a spot where they were 2 years ago with a rookie quarterback and Mitch Trubisky, probably wouldn't really make too much sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do think that offensively, that's probably the one missing piece is that wide receiver one. And I'm not saying that George Pickens isn't the wide receiver one.
Right.
He hasn't been able to put it all together for a full year, and it's not completely his fault.
No, it's not. I think all things considered, he had a really good year last year.
Yeah, well, as soon as he got a quarterback that was capable, as Art Rooney and everybody else said, I mean, he really showed up quite a bit. Even in the game where he didn't get a target, he was out there blocking. He was supporting his team.
Yeah, he was motivated.
Yeah, because of the quarterback position changed, and as much as I like Mason Rudolph as a quarterback and whatnot, I don't think he's better than Russell Wilson.
Right.
And I fully expect Russell Wilson to be able to do more with this talent than what Mason did last year. And that should say a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you, man. George Pickens this is a big year for him. And I think he has the ability to transition into a wide receiver one. I really do. I just think when there's an availability there, especially with their need of another playmaker on offense, you can't pass it up. You can't. Like I said, if it was 2 years ago, it wouldn't really make too much sense to make a trade like that.
But no, yeah, you're right. Moving on real quick before we call it a show. Did you see the that little trailer for Madden 25?
Yeah, I did.
Did you see who was returning kickoffs?
Yeah. They bought the hype, huh?
They sure did. For those that haven't seen it, Madden 25 is having in their trailer, they have Justin Fields returning kickoffs.
Yeah.
And how do you think Justin felt watching that?
He probably laughed at it. I bet he laughed at it. I bet he probably was lighthearted about it. But he's got a chip on his shoulder too. He knows what's at stake. He knows that this is a big year for his career, even next year, whether that's here or somewhere else. But he probably laughed about it and shrugged it off. Probably wasn't really much of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, wow.
Yeah, so they pretty much bit the bait. EA pretty much bit the bait that some of those NFL guys out there bit as well and put out there, oh, Steelers considering merge. Like, dude, take a joke.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, are you a
Yeah.
moron?
Speaking of jokes, did you see the Patrick Queen and Marlon Humphrey?
Yeah, that was funny.
So for those that
That was
don't
funny.
know,
That was good.
Marlon Humphrey tells Patrick Queen that the Pittsburgh grass might not be greener. And today, Patrick Queen goes out there with a video of him watering his grass, and it's pretty green.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah, that
these
was
guys
funny.
are hilarious.
Yeah, that was funny. So I'm sure they're good. They're good. They're good buddies. I'm sure. It's lighthearted fun. It's kind of funny just seeing something like that, especially with the Ravens.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And the last thing that I want to bring up to your attention is: have you seen the little controversy that's going on with Le'Veon Bell and Justin Fields?
Yeah, that tweet or whatever.
Yeah. So he tweeted out a video of Justin throwing the ball to some receivers, and in his tweet he said that he's throwing late, that the ball's arriving late. Now there's been some other people that have came back and said no, his quarterback trainer's right there, and he's working on things, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
There's been rumors that he was struggling in camp.
Right.
Any concerns about Justin Fields at this point for you?
Nothing new. Nothing new than what's already been there, honestly, in terms of him in Chicago. I think really what's going to turn fans' heads is when he's actually on the field and seeing any level of progression, seeing him win games for this team, seeing him make good throws, seeing him make smart decisions, seeing him elevate the offense, seeing him push the ball down the field, blah blah blah. That's what it's going to be. So in terms of when the concerns stop, it's going to be when Justin Fields is out there and if he can put together some good football. So in terms of concerns I have is nothing new now than what he has had in Chicago. It's really going to come down to him off the field and certain things that we hear through the Steelers brass. But that's not going to be enough. We're going to have to wait and see it pan out on the football field. And once that happens, then we'll kind of have our answer. But there's things I like. There's things that are messy. There's things that make you question, like, okay, is he a guy that can lead an organization? But he's a young kid still. He had some negative aspects and context in Chicago. He also had some good things in Chicago. So sometimes guys just need to sit. And I know fans want to see Fields, and I know fans think Fields needs to play, and I understand that. I think at the same time, he's still young, and it benefits a lot of guys to sit behind a guy and learn than just thrusting him back out there through his problems. And I think there's a lot of guys you can look at in the last 5-6 years that were in that situation and they sat and they were able to thrive a little bit. And with Fields, we don't know if the Steelers are going to pick up they declined his option, but we don't know if they're going to give him a short-term extension before the season starts. We don't know if they'll try to bring him back next year. We have to wait and see how things play out this year. But with that said, yeah, it's just kind of wait and see on him on the field. But I think fans need to look at the big picture and say, yeah, okay, there's a lot of things to like here and there's a lot of things to dislike here. It's kind of all over the place. But if he can figure those things out, the things that he struggles with aren't things that he can't overcome. So if he can clean those things up and get some good coaching, sit a little bit, reset himself, that's going to benefit him.
Yeah,
the
I
quarterback
agree.
we had in here previously, there wasn't really a lot to like overall. There wasn't.
Yeah.
With Fields, you at least have things there that you do like, that catch your eye. And if he can kind of clean up some of those messy aspects to his game that he's had, he could be a solid player.
Yeah, I think he definitely can. I think that when it comes to how he looks right now, I mean, he's only a few months removed from the Chicago Bears. It wasn't like, hey, I put pen and paper, I put on a different color uniform, all my problems are resolved. Yeah, he has to work through them. And I think that that's going to take a little bit of time. One of my biggest theories, when an offensive coordinator turned new head coach fails, it's because, well, that offensive coordinator had probably an established quarterback and they were successful. And that's why he was given the opportunity to be a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's being a new head coach, sometimes you have a situation where they're picking top in the draft for a quarterback. Now, and I'm sure it's I don't want to compare it to this, but I have a highly trained, I've trained my dog quite a bit. And then I got a puppy and I got more frustrated with it because I expected it to know more because of the dog that I had already trained. And I think that when you have a situation where you have a coach who has an established quarterback that you don't have to go over the finer details with, then you go into a situation where you have a rookie who's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, don't know anything. Mm-hmm. And your expectation may not, be what it is. You have to develop that player.
Right.
And I don't think that Nagy developed. Obviously, he didn't develop. He didn't get developed. And who did he have before? I think he was with Aaron Rodgers for the longest time. And so I think that's what got him his coaching opportunities. So
who, Matt Nagy?
Yeah. Wasn't he with the
No, that was Hackett. That was Hackett.
Yeah.
Nagy was with he was with the Chiefs, I think.
Yeah. You're right. Well, either way, he was. That's even worse.
Well, Daniel, again, it's Matt Nagy here we're talking about,
Right, exactly. So it's not like you have to teach some of those things, when you have, especially if you don't have a player that has it all or whatever, right? So, like I said, I just think that we got to give him a little bit of time with an experienced quarterback coach that can develop him. I don't think that we should expect him to be anywhere near polished before the season even starts.
Yeah, no, not at all. And it might take, best case scenario for him is he sits a little bit behind Russ, and the teams love what they're seeing from him off the field, or just not an in-game situation because he wouldn't be playing. The best case scenario for him, at least from everything that we have laid out in front of us, is for him to learn from Russell Wilson, and is for him to reset himself, and is for him to learn the Steelers offense, and is for him to work with whatever coaches that is through the Steelers, outside the organization, whatever, and clean up certain aspects of his game. And when his time comes, and then you have to wait and see how it happens. But that's the best thing for him. That's why I think he's probably in the best situation that he probably could be in. Because if he came in here and he was thrusted in right away as quarterback one for the team, sure, would I have a level of excitement? Yeah, because I think there's things that are exciting there. But at the same time, I think that there still will be the struggles. There will still be those things there that have been in there in Chicago, because he's getting thrusted right into an organization that is ready to freaking win right now. And when you have certain level of expectations, and when fans are hungry for the win, for this team to kind of start winning, and the organization putting themselves out there, they're ready to win these, they're ready to start winning the playoffs again. For a guy like Justin Fields, who's still a young kid and has had a lot of struggles in Chicago, in my opinion, through that, is it's not a great situation for him to be thrusted in there the first game of the year, and for him to take the franchise on his shoulders right away.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. Now, some people might agree with that, but still want to see Fields instead of Russ. Okay, I understand. But I think for his long-term sake in this league, it's better he sits for a little bit. It's not like this kid's 26, 27 years old.
Nah, he's younger than Kenny Pickett.
He's younger. He's 2 years younger than Kenny Pickett, dude. And this guy's played 3 years already.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, just give him some time. I don't think I think he came out of college a little bit too soon. Also,
he
I think that
did. He probably did.
May have been an issue. So he's going to get to this is around the time where he's going to either take a step forward and be what we hope he
Right.
becomes,
Right.
or he doesn't. So we'll
Right.
see.
And if he doesn't, the Steelers have no ties. Simple as that.
Exactly. And they're going to have a full year to evaluate him,
Right. And even if
nobody
they
else
would
is.
give him a cheap, sorry, Daniel, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
And nobody else is going to be able to evaluate him if he doesn't get on the field. So
Right.
it's, they're going to get a good idea. And if he ends up being
Yeah.
something, they're going to have the first
No, they are.
opportunity to grab.
Yeah, they are. And if real quick, if they end up giving him a short-term type of extension with a lot of incentive, again, you're not tied in. You're not
Yeah.
tied in. That's up to him earning that. That's up to him going out there putting that together. So regardless, I think it's a win-win spot for the Steelers. I hope they give him a short-term extension just in the sense of, there's things to like about the kid.
I agree. And with that being said, guys, that's going to be a show. I thank you so much, Nathan. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Daniel. Always good to be back on here with you. You guys can follow me at In Hindsight right there by my name. Daniel and I, we do our shows together, as you guys know, weekly. So feel free to check that out for everybody listening and tuning in. Daniel and I do a show together once a week, usually, especially throughout the season. So you guys can do that, post Steeler content, post some other content, sometimes other sport related, NBA or NFL stuff or baseball, whatever. So if you're interested in that, feel free to hit that. I appreciate your guys' support, and make sure anybody that is not, make sure you're following Daniel on here as well.
Appreciate you. Make sure you give us a 5-star review if you're listening to this to Apple. Give us a like and subscribe on any other platform that you might be listening to. I'll be back again on Monday on the Steelers Hangover at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So with that being said, guys, we're out of here. Peace.